think in America, to me, the authority of the parent and the role and responsibility of parents is being undermined. And I think parents need to wake up to that. I think when I grew up and maybe back in the day, even before that, I think parents could depend on the institutions of society like schools and churches and businesses and government to support family values and parenting and authority and things like that in the home. But nowadays, I'm sorry to say, that's just not true. The role of the parent is being undermined, and some people believe the nuclear family shouldn't exist, and that the government needs to be, basically raising our children. So I'm saying to mom and dad, no, mom and dad, you are the most important people in the community.
Welcome to the Parenting Wisdom Podcast. Today I have Richard Ramos with us, who created the program Parents on a Mission and also wrote a book by the same title. I'm very happy to have you, Richard, with us today. I just finished reading your book, and I have to say that I completely resonated with everything that you said there. And I think that this is such an amazing book because it leaves parents and people who read it just empowered, feeling that we can actually do this. And I feel like it's different from other parenting books that I read, and I've really read dozens, if not hundreds of them already. And many times, when you finish reading a book as a parent, you feel like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. And I feel like the feeling that I got when I read your book, it was a feeling of empowerment, of making me realize and remember actually how much this job as a parent is important. Even only the title Parents on a Mission, how this is actually a mission of ours. And it's it's probably the most important mission in the world. So why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your work?
Well, thank you. That's a big compliment, and I really appreciate that. I just want to say, what you just said is exactly what my intention was in writing that book. So thank you very much for that compliment. I appreciate it. As far as my personal background, I grew up in Northeast Los Angeles, which is an area in Los Angeles known for violence and gangs and drugs and things like that. So that's my background. Amongst all the many wonderful things about Los Angeles, there are many things, but Northeast LA and East LA are kind of known for those things. And so I think a lot of that stuck with me even as I grew older and got out of those situations. I never forgot where I came from, and I've seen, so many broken families. I come from a broken family. I was raised by a single mom. I'm the youngest of 5 children. My father, unfortunately, was an alcoholic, and when he would drink, he would be very violent. And so I witnessed some domestic violence when I was younger, and then my mom eventually made him leave. So I think those kinds of things, kind of stick with you. And for whatever reason, as I got older and into my career, I um, I wanted to help. So that's just my background. As I said, Parents on a Mission is a result of I was a at-risk counselor at a junior high school, and I had 50 of the worst kids in the school on my caseload, and my job was to encourage them, help them to do better. These are kids, some of them were in gangs, some of them were, using drugs, dropping out of school, not coming to class, so all of those kinds of things that parents don't want their kids doing. So my role was to, hey, what's up? What's going on? Build relationship, which I did. But what happened was, after a while, as a young parent, this was back in the 90s, I realized I just can't believe everything they're telling me, because they're telling me, because I would say, well, what is it? Why are you destroying your life? What's going on with you? Eventually, that led to something about them just not being happy at home. So I decided to do home visits. And when I did that, that changed my whole perspective on how to help young people, because I realized I'm fighting a uphill losing battle, because all the things I was trying to accomplish at school, they were going home to this dysfunctional relationship or non-relationship. And I said to myself, if I really want to help these students, I'm going to have to help their parents. And so one day I was at a birthday party, and a gang member had been killed. And the grandfather at that party, he came up to me and he was excited. He said, "Richard, look what's going on in our city. You need to get these kids together and talk to them. They listen to you, all this." And I said to him, "Well, I have done that and I will always do that, but there's a better way to handle this. I don't think that's the best way." He said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're a gardener by profession. Let me put it to you in a way that you'll understand. If you were to walk down the street here in your neighborhood and you saw that the flowers in the gardens of your neighbors were dry and wilted and dying, who would you rather talk to? The flowers or the gardener?" And he looked at me and he said, "I never thought about it that way." And I said, "Well, the problem in the community," I explained to him, "the flowers in our yard are like the kids in our home. And the problem in the community is everybody wants me to be their gardener, and I can't do it. I need more gardeners, or in other words, I need more parents." So that's how Parents on a Mission got started. That's a little bit of my background, and so I've been doing this for quite a few years, and I'm happy to say that we've had some pretty good results.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I feel like really what you're talking about, the probably maybe the main issue is that parents are not taking responsibility for their
Correct.
children, right? Parents are not stepping into the leadership role that they are supposed to take when they're having children. Um, and I think that that's right for all parents, no matter where they come from, what class they are, what neighborhood they come from. Because maybe in some neighborhoods, children have the risk to join gangs, but in other neighborhoods, it's, follow different social trends that are very dangerous as well and
Right.
can be even more dangerous than that. And I love that you talk about how important building the family culture is, giving children a sense of meaning inside the house so they won't have to seek it outside of the house. So can you talk a little bit about that and how, first of all, how parents start to take responsibility for their family?
Well, I think in America, to me, the authority of the parent and the role and responsibility of parents is being undermined. And I think parents need to wake up to that. I think when I grew up, and maybe back in the day, even before that, I think parents could depend on the institutions of society like schools and churches and businesses and government to support family values and parenting and authority and things like that in the home. But nowadays, I'm sorry to say, that's just not true. The role of the parent is being undermined, and some people believe the nuclear family shouldn't exist, and that the government needs to be, basically raising our children. So I'm saying to mom and dad, no, and dad, you are the most important people in the community. Why? Because you are raising the citizens of the community. And where do citizens come from? They go to school. Citizens don't come to school. Come from, I'm sorry, citizens don't come from the school. They go to school. They don't come from business. They go to business. So they come from the home. Therefore, our neighbors and the school and the police and everybody else are depending on you to raise a young person who understands authority, who understands respect for others, who understands concern for other people, who understands how to be giving to a community rather than taking, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first. And parents, it's, well, I let the pastor do it, let the coach do it, let the counselor do it, let the teacher, let my uncle, or who, all these other people. It's like, no, you must accept the responsibility. And that's why I say, when everybody else says it takes a village to raise a child, I say it does not take a village to raise a child. It just takes good parents. And what we want from the village, we want their support, not their control. And that's what I believe is happening. So that's as far as responsibility. And one more thing on that, I say to parents all the time, we're not blaming you for everything, but we are naming you as the number one asset in our community. So that's who you are, and be encouraged that that's the role you have. As far as the culture in the home, imagine this never happened to me, but imagine if a dad is taking his son aside or his daughter, looks them in the eye and says, "Son, you have a role to play in this family. You have a role to play here, and I appreciate this about you, that about whatever you're just saying that to your son, and then helping him understand that then later on, you're gonna have an influence, a role to play in the community, in your school, later on in your job." Just basically preparing them to understand, "Oh, I'm not just here existing.
Yeah.
I'm here on purpose with a purpose and building that culture because I believe that in a family, that's where kids learn how to be a citizen first by the respect that they have for their father, their mother, their brother, their sister, all together, one another, communication, forgiveness. Maybe you said something hurt each other, but you forgive, you reconcile. All of those things, in my view, first should be learned at home, and then that culture translates out to the community.
It's a very political trend in a way. If you think about like the philosophical roots of this whole issue, it all comes from a specific political agenda. And I think that the society has undermined parents, and parents, in a way, took that and adopted that and let go of the responsibility. And I don't think that is because they want to make their life easier. It's because they don't believe that authority is good. We started to view authority as something that is controlling, something that is bad, something that is related to a authoritarian. Um, and parents get mistaken between what it means to be authority and what it means to be controlling of over other people. And there is a big confusion there that
Right.
people are having a hard time to find the balance between those two. So how do you reconcile between those two opposite ends of the authority?
Yeah, well, in the book, I talk about the three styles of parenting that were created. I forget her first name. I think it's Diane Baumrind. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but she talks about three styles that I talk about there. It's one is the authoritarian style of parenting, which is probably what a lot of us grew up in, which is basically just do what I say, not what I do. Do what I say. I don't want to hear you. Shut up. Go to your room. Just do what I say. I'm the dad. That's too bad. You don't agree. You don't like it. Doesn't matter. And parents just shut down their kids. It's a very dictator, authoritarian style of parenting. Then she talks about the permissive parents, which is on the opposite side, which is, hey, just do whatever you want and let kids whine and cry and throw tantrums. And they don't see themselves as somebody as shaping the character and the moral values of their kids. But the third style, which we recommend, is of the authoritative. And authoritative parenting means that you are taking responsibility as the authority figure, but you also are developing a culture where you're teaching your kids, they have a voice. They can express their opinion. You can have a conversation. You're going to make the final decision, but you're listening to them and, having a good dialogue. It's not just all authoritarianism. So that's how we teach it because you have to balance nurturing and kindness and love and building the self-esteem and the self-worth and all of those things in a child, very important. At the same time, helping them understand the reality of a society is that there are authority figures that we must adhere to. Otherwise, we have no society. We have no rules and laws and mores of how you work with each other and people of different backgrounds. So I completely agree with what you said. Parents have abdicated that role of authority because maybe they're afraid that they're doing it wrong because that's kind of what they're being told. A lot of TV programs are that way. They show the dad as some, bumbling fool, and kind of give the image of, that's who dad really is versus a strong father of love and care and that has authority and that the kids listen to and respect.
Right. And, people in general are not happy with just doing whatever they want all day. That's not what makes us happy. What makes us happy is to contribute to society. What makes us happy is to belong to something that is bigger than ourselves, by stepping out of ourselves in order to do something that is more meaningful. And one of the things that you talked about in your book, and I want you to talk about this a little bit further, you talked about helping them empower their own voice of consciousness. So can you explain that a little bit? Um,
Yeah, um, I talk about the home field advantage and what that is. Parents used to ask me, "Richard, this is great information, but I have younger kids, and I don't want my young daughter to follow in the footsteps of her older sister or my young son to follow in the footsteps of his older brother." So I didn't have a strategy at the time. I didn't know what to say to them when they would say, "How do I prevent my kid from going down that road?" So I developed that strategy. It's called the home field advantage. It's there in the book. But in that, I'm talking about from 0 to 2, what should be happening in the life of a child once they're born up until they're 2 years old. And then I talk about from 2 to 5 years old, what should be happening, and from 5 to 12, what should be happening. Why? Because in that 12-year time frame, you are preparing your child to deal with what's coming, which is what? Competition, that I call competition, pressure, peer pressure, school. Now they're older, the drugs, the sex, the internet, all of that. And now they're 12, and that's, we're told, is the time when kids kind of get off. What I'm talking about that you're asking, from 0 to 2, in that time frame, and from 2 to 5, you're developing their self-worth, their stability, their emotional stability, all of the things that cause us to feel good about who we are and all of that. But when we all know as parents, when from 2 to 5, now kids are, they want to do what they want, when they want, how they want, and if they don't get their way, they're screaming and crying. And so now that's a role I call of a trainer. It's really about discipline. And what you're doing there when you're telling your kids, "No, don't do that. Don't talk that way. Don't act that way. Don't go there. Don't go, you're gonna hurt yourself." What you're really doing is you're educating their conscience, because, they don't really necessarily know what's right or wrong. I mean, you never have to teach a kid to do what's wrong. If you think about it, when have you ever taught your child do the wrong thing? They kind of just do it automatically. What we're doing is we're teaching them to do the right thing, and that's building their conscience, saying, "No, don't talk that way, don't act that way, don't go there, that's dangerous." And that's what I mean by educating their conscience, and that's why that role is so important. Now imagine a 2 to 5 years old, and, I've seen a lot of this, and I'm sure you have too, when you're not doing that, when you're just allowing them to have tantrums. I'll give you an example. The other week ago, I was somewhere, and we were relaxing at a pool, and kids are all over, Well, this one family was right next to me, and this little kid, I would say he was probably 4 years old, somewhere in there, 3 or 4 years old. He would not listen to his parents. He was yelling at his mother, hitting his mother. She was trying to get him to do something. The dad is sitting there reading something, doing nothing, saying nothing, doing nothing. This kid is yelling, screaming, he's throwing a tantrum, hitting his mom, and she's not doing anything about it. Well, in my opinion, that's not what I would do. I would not allow that. So again, when you're not educating the conscience of children, just think about where that's going to lead that young boy when he gets older, because his parents are not accepting this role of disciplining him and educate his conscience to know, "This is not correct, son. You don't do that. You don't talk to me that way," et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I mean by educating their conscience.
yeah. Yeah, it really reminded me. I just finished reading a book that's called The Art of Elevation. And in this book, it's based on Jewish wisdom, on how to raise kids according to Jewish wisdom. And they talk a lot about the fact that every human being is born with this inclination to be good and to be bad. And the natural way, as you just said, is to be selfish, right? To do things for yourself only. And the good way, what we want to teach them is mostly to overcome that, to become something else, to mature, to grow up, to become responsible for your own actions, your words, how you are in the world. So that really reminded me of that. And also something that I like that you said in the book, which is we want to bend the child without breaking their spirit. So many parents, and I think that's also part of the whole ideological atmosphere that we are right now in our society, is that parents think that if they limit their children and put boundaries on them, it means that they're doing something wrong, right? It means that they're taking this wonderful soul and they're restricting them. But that's actually completely wrong, because the soul that emerges into this world needs us to help him elevate, to help him grow out from that immature state that they are, because that's what's going to make them be happy, successful, fulfilled people in the world. Nobody wants to stay a spoiled brat. Nobody likes to be around a spoiled brat. So it's our responsibility as parents to show them the way of living a mature life, an independent life, a life of responsibility, and life of meaning at the end of the day.
That's absolutely correct, and just think about that. That spoiled brat becomes a father. That's where the real issues that I've seen over and over and over again, and through Parents on a Mission, so many parents, whether it's the mother or the father, that's what I'm pointing out to them in a kind way, hopefully in a loving way. I'm challenging them to look within themselves. If you're having problems with your children for one reason or another, the first thing to do is check ourselves and ask ourselves, maybe I'm part of this problem. Is there something that I'm doing or not doing, that I'm saying or not saying, that is contributing to the anger, resentment, rebellion, defiance of my child? But when we are immature ourselves, if we are not personally growing, as you know, that's a big part of the book. I talk about emotional maturity and the personal growth of parents and how that is the foundation and vital for all the other things I talk about, whether it's exercising your authority, discipline, reconciliation, all the things I talk about. It's very difficult to do those things if you yourself are not emotionally mature. And I talk about how, as take it as a dad, if I'm immature and I'm 35 years old and I still have a 15-year-old mentality, that becomes a real problem when your kids become 13 or 14 years old. Because when they start to act out as most teenagers do, now you have a 15-year-old child and you have a 15-year-old mentality parent dealing with that child, and that doesn't go well. It doesn't go well. That's where all the resentment and the arguing, the authoritarianism, "I'm the dad, you shut up. I'm right, you're wrong, that's it." That kind of a mentality. And so what you're just saying is very important that we as parents understand. And I know it's hard, again, we're not trying to beat up mom or dad. I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just saying we have a responsibility too to grow ourselves and to make sure that, we are responding to our children from a mature place rather than from an immature place, because that just causes a lot of clashing and a lot of heartache and a lot of pain.
Yeah. So you talked about in that part of the book, about the emotional maturity of the parents. You talk about a specific system that you teach parents. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, the first thing I talk about is that we need to know ourselves. That's the first step. Now, I try to keep it very simple. I just give them four basic steps. I mean, there in personal growth, there's a lot of, emotional intelligence. There's a lot you could read about it. There's a lot of things online, a lot of books, a lot of great information. So I try to compile that into a very simple process. So the first one is know yourself. Get quiet. How do you know yourself? Well, it's a process of meditation or of prayer, if you want to call it that. But basically, we are bombarded with noise, TV, television, radio, internet, texting, work, blah, 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 all the noise. Shut it down at some point every day. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's an hour, whatever it is. Maybe it's in the car, wherever. And my spot is right behind me, what you see right behind me. That's where I go, and I'm there to just set myself so that to know my thoughts, know my emotions, know my immaturity, know my weaknesses and my strengths, all of kinds of things, just to know me, know Richard, and have a good relationship with me because all of my relationships with my children, my wife, and everybody else flow out of my relationship with myself. And if I don't like myself, then I'm not going to do well with others. So that's the first step. The second part is to understand the power of our mind, the power of our thoughts, and understanding, why do I do the things or do the things I do and say the things I say that are hurtful sometimes, which we all do. I've done it more than I want to admit. Why do I do those kinds of things? Well, we start understanding that our thoughts, which is why I said this meditative time is so important because our thoughts are coming from our subconscious mind that are then leading to our choices. And so if I'm not controlling my thought life, then, there's a lot of things, that come up. We're influenced outside, we're influenced inside of how we think. And the main thing is to understand or to be aware of how do I think about me? What are my thoughts about myself? So an emotional talent, self-awareness leads to self-management, then you can be socially aware. And if you're socially aware, you can have relational management, in with other people. Those are the 4 steps of emotional intelligence. So I just kind of break it down. So know yourself. Number 2, understand the power of your thoughts, that your thought life, control it by catching your thoughts, change your thoughts, and then verbally replace those negative thoughts with a positive affirmation. The third step is to understand the power of your choice. And what Stephen Covey said that I learned a long time ago, I am not the victim of my circumstances. I am the victim of my choices in
Mm,
my circumstances because I have to take responsibility and a lot of people don't want to.
mm.
What they say is, no, I'm a victim of it's the government, it's racism, it's because I'm Mexican, it's always everybody else's fault. No, I'm making the choices that I make, and therefore I am responsible for me. So that's the third step in personal growth is I have to understand the choices that I am making and where are those coming from? They're coming from my thoughts. You see, so those are things I talk more about it, of course, in the book. And then the fourth step is the power of forgiveness, which is, as you know, forgiveness is just so needed in human relationships. But we're talking about parenting. And one of the most powerful things that a parent can do is that when we blow it, when we make mistakes, to own it, admit it, accept your responsibility to go to your son and say, son, I'm so sorry that I talked that way to you. I lost my temper. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And if more parents would do that, we would have a lot less problems, I believe, in this world.
Yeah. So, what are some ways that parents can discipline their children without having to yell or punish harshly or go into that controlling mode?
Yeah, that, really comes down to, again, the emotional maturity that we're always practicing. Three steps that I give. Number 1 is to understand, or at least I believe that my relationship with my children is more important than being right. And sometimes, our kids do wrong things, but when our kids do the wrong thing, we need to do the right thing. And sometimes we end up doing the wrong thing right back. So, you can fight fire with fire, you can fight fire with water, but we don't want to be fighting fire with gasoline. And sometimes because of my lack of emotional maturity, I pour gasoline on the fire. I just make it worse. So when kids do the wrong thing, I need to do the right thing, whatever that might be. And sometimes it's not about being right. It's about relationship. That's what's important. So, yeah, they were wrong in what they did. They were wrong in what they said. They were wrong in whatever it is. But sometimes where I'm coming from is I don't want to just be disciplining. I don't want to just be yelling. I don't want to just be on their case about it. I want the relationship. So if I do get on their case too much, then I'm going to come back and realize, you know what, I'm sorry about that, and give the kid the understanding, even though I don't like what you did, I love you. What you did, I don't like, but you, I love. And that's why, I said what I said, but you're trying to build that relationship. And if you have that in mind, that it's about the relationship, then you understand that discipline is not punishment. There's a difference between punishment and discipline. Punishment is you're not concerned about an outcome. You're not concerned about relationship. All you're concerned about, you did wrong, you're going to get punished.
Mhm.
That's it. Discipline is you want there to be an outcome. You want there to be a change. You want there to be a lesson. It's a lesson. It's a time for uh, giving kids a lesson in whatever it was. But out of that lesson, they grow. They get better. It's a teaching moment. That's what discipline is for. So if we have that understanding and discipline, that helps to know this is not about punishment. So that takes thought. Like, okay, what am I going to do? How can I get a better what I've been doing is not working. It's not working. I keep telling my son, I keep telling him, he keeps doing it over and over. What can I do? So that's a different mind frame than just always punishment, punishment. I've done that and I know it doesn't work. But when I changed, that helped. So those are a couple of the things. I mean, I do talk more about it, but those are a couple of just coming from a place of it's about relationship, not about being right. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is a teaching moment to get a better result.
Yeah. You said you wrote that discipline seeks to cure
Yes.
in the book, which I absolutely love. One last thing that I want us to touch on is you talked about the importance of connecting our children to their history, the history of the community, the history of the family, and have them take pride in something that is bigger than themselves. And that is also a very powerful tool to make them loyal to your family and not loyal to some kind of social trend or some kind of gang that is happening outside. So, what are some tools that parents can start to instill in their families in order to create that sense of loyalty to the family?
Yeah, that's the big issue. I say that every parent in America, maybe in the world, you are in a daily competition for the heart and the mind and the loyalty of your child. And if you don't understand that, you're not even in the game. And mom and dad, you need to get in the game. So how do you win loyalty of your children? So I give four basic things. The first one you mentioned, which is a tool that I call legacy. And that is to teach our children about our history. Who are we as a family? And not only that, who do we want to be? Where do we come from? What does the Ramos family stand for? What legacy do we want to leave in this community? And even when I'm gone, that you guys can take and carry on and then give it to your children. What that does, that gives our children, it anchors their soul. It gives them a sense of belonging, which is a basic human need. So that's the first, and I give an exercise using the last name as an acronym down the left side of the paper, and every letter RAMOS stands for something that describes to our children the legacy of the Ramos family. The R stands for revolutionary, meaning that when we see things that are wrong, we want to try to do something about it and revolutionize and not accept the status quo, even if everybody else is. If we feel morally, no, this is not correct. So that's one thing. The second thing is what I call the power of handwritten versus high touch, no, high tech versus high touch. And that's the power of the handwritten note. And this is simple, but we're talking about how do you win the loyalty of your children? Texting kids is fine. Email, that's okay. But there's something special. I'm sure we all experience this when somebody sat down and wrote out a handwritten note or letter. The reason that is special because that takes time to sit down and think, what do I really want to say? So when you do that for your kids and you give it to them, I used to put it in their lunch or put it in when they play sports. So I'd put it in their bag or their, their shoe or their helmet or whatever. So they'd find it. And in that letter, I wrote out something, short letter, but I'm telling them something about how much I appreciate them, et cetera, et cetera. And that's another way how to win the loyalty. Another, what I call is being a hero to your children. We all have heroes, and kids have heroes. Usually, the rock star, the what I say, movie star, and the athletic star. That's fine, but I want to be a hero too. So, how do I be a hero? Three basic steps. Number one, priority. Show my children that you are the priority of my life, and whatever is important to you, I'm going to be there. And kids understand when we can't always be there because we're busy and they know that. But what hurts them is when they know you could have been there, but you decided you chose not to. Something else was more priority. Second is honesty, integrity. Listen, parents, you don't have to be perfect to be a hero. You just have to be honest and own up and apologize. And when you do that, trust me, it goes a long way in winning the loyalty of your children because they know that you get it, you understand them, and they trust you. I am not perfect. Yeah, I am far from perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes. I still make mistakes. But one thing I am, and my kids will know, is that I am honest and I own up, and they know that because I've apologized to them more than I want to admit. The third thing is crisis. When my kids are going through a hard time, I've showed up. I didn't always know what to do. I didn't always know what to say. But if it was a crisis to them, I showed up. So those are three things that I talk about that help win loyalty, win the heart of your children, win the mind of your children.
That's beautiful. And I love how simple it is, not too sophisticated, very straightforward. Everybody can understand it. Uh, and I really, really admire your mission, your message. So if people want to learn more other than buying the book Parents on a Mission, how can they learn more about your program? Are you still teaching that program?
Yes, I am. I'd love people to be involved in that if they can. They can go to my website, richardrramos.com. Don't forget my middle initial, Richard R. Ramos. There they'll find the program, Parents on a Mission. I also have a program, Youth on a Mission, which is about leadership, and a book there that I wrote for youth. And what I do on Parents on a Mission, I train what I call parent mentors. It's a 3-day program. I certify them, and then they take my curriculum from the book as in a curriculum form, and then they teach it to parents in their constituency, whether it's a prison or a jail, school districts, nonprofit organizations, churches, all over the country, wherever they're at. So they can take the course online with me live online like this, or I can come in person if they have the means to do that. I can come out and it's a 3-day program. They'll find all of that information on my website and the books on the website as well. Also, I want to say, Efrat, I don't know if you know, I just released a brand new book called The Art of Step Parenting, How to how to blend families without tearing them apart. And they'll find this book as well. If you're a step parent or you're blending a family, like I've been a parent all my parenting life, and I know there are certain dynamics about being a step parent or blending families that are difficult, challenging, etc. And all these years that I've been doing this, I of course always run into single parents, divorced parents, parents that are blending families, and there are just, and I know personally. So I wrote this book as a sequel to Parents on a Mission, to kind of address those specific dynamics. So the last thing I'll say is I have a podcast called the Parent Whisperer podcast. Those are ways people can be in touch with me or follow what I'm teaching.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to link all those in the show notes as well so people can find it easily. Thank you so much, Richard. It was really a lovely conversation.
Well, listen, I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you having me on your show. It's a great opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to spread my message.
Thank you.